This is Reanimated. It's a podcast we do about zombies and undead things. My name is Stuart. I'm one of your hosts, and joining me from the other coast is H.A. Conrad. Hello, H.A.
Hello.
Hello. We are here today to continue our discussion about Revival, the show from Sci-Fi, which is zombie-ish. And we also have a little bit of news to talk about. Not much out there, but it is the doldrums of summer, which we're well acquainted with being not the best times for zombie news. However, kind of a doozy dropped this week.
Yeah.
HA, what did you think about this news dropping about Neil Druckmann?
Yeah, it honestly it felt like kind of surprising, especially given all the, hype leading into the season and how he was talking about the next season of Last of Us. So I'm very curious, and I don't know if you felt the same way, but it was really to me, I don't want to say it was like a bombshell, but it felt very surprising to me. Um, and it did feel a little bit sudden. Usually when something this big is going to happen, somebody's kind of broadcasting it a little bit, or at least starting to broadcast it a little bit to lead into it so it's not such a shock. And this does not feel like that. Did you feel the same way?
It does well, to say it comes out of nowhere isn't entirely how I feel because you and I and Kyle, when we were reviewing second season of Last of Us, were all saying like, well, I don't know that they were the best people to have in the writers' room because it was all Craig Mazin until the last couple episodes, and then Neil Druckmann and Haley Gross, who also has announced that she's stepping away from the show, were in the writers' room for the last couple episodes, and we didn't love them.
True.
And I believe we even said maybe that wasn't the best move. I feel like maybe they listen to the podcast. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them. It's a really influential podcast out there in the world. So
Clearly, clearly.
they might have been like, gosh, if Reanimated thinks we should have a little distance from this show, maybe we oughta. I think if anything, it speaks, oh, in, all that aside, it really speaks to they saw a decrease in critical and audience
Mm,
response to the show in the second season. I think this tracks with how the game was received. It's much more
mm,
divisive. And so I don't know, maybe I think it's a good thing ultimately. I think Craig Mazin is a huge fan of Neil Druckmann's work and will continue to adhere to it where it makes sense, but he's also an excellent writer in his own right, and therefore he can make decisions that are not going to be as precious about the existing material.
mm. I could see that. I mean, and Craig Mazin came out and praised him, and it doesn't feel. To me, there doesn't feel like there's animus. I wonder if there's pressure in other channels, to your point about the,
From
uh,
HBO, maybe.
yeah, potentially. Or look, maybe it's also, I have a feeling like, not I have a feeling, I think it's very clear that these kinds of things are very high pressured and there's a lot riding on things. And, um, it could also be that maybe he really does want to focus on these other things more, and kind of like he spent this time dealing with this, and so he's out. To me, though, it does feel like there's some other thing that we're not aware of, that maybe they were potentially asked to leave and this is their graceful exit, or encouraged to leave and they saw the writing on the wall. Either way, it does feel like it's amicable versus contentious, or at least at face.
Yeah.
So I have trust in Craig Mazin. I think that he is a brilliant director and writer, and I think he can certainly carry this as a showrunner. So we'll have to see what happens. Now, if they brought in Angela Kane, I would be just so happy if this ended up. That's like my dream team,
Can you
but
imagine? My
that would be
goodness.
so awesome. But very curious to see what they do in season three. And also, I kind of, as much of a non-gamer as I am, I do think Druckmann's a great with creating these kinds of cool worlds. So I would love to see what's next on the roster for him. So we'll have to see how this goes. And people were kind of comparing this to the George R. R. Martin, and this whole kind of like thing. I don't think it feels quite like that. And again, at least they're saying all the right things publicly. Maybe things will come out later.
Yeah, yeah. If we're following the Martin scale, it'll be in like 10 years, right? After the
Right, right. But we'll have to see and see what this means for the franchise and for the show. So yeah, that was pretty big news item, given the dearth of news. But yeah, that was all that we really had. So anything else you want to chat about related to this?
I think that's about it. I haven't had a ton of zombies in my life lately. That's yeah. I watched Companion yesterday, which is this show that's a movie that's been getting advertised to me on HBO about it's kind of in the sphere of Deus Ex Machina, robots that are then self-aware, you know.
Yep.
I know that I think that that's a soft spot for you too. It wasn't bad. I really like Jack Quaid.
Jack Jack Quaid. Yes.
He's
He's
awesome.
Nick
And
Ryan and Dennis Quaid's kid, right? Yeah.
Get Out, really? I had no idea. That's cool. He's a great actor.
Yeah. I like him a lot.
But not a lot of zombie stuff in my life right now. So I'll take what I can get.
Yeah. Me too. All right. Well, let's jump in then to episode 3 of Revival. Are you ready to hit it?
Let's do it. For me, this episode's called Reality Check. It took me most of the episode to remember who everybody was because it's a pretty big cast. I don't know if you had that same.
It is a pretty big cast. I watched it immediately last weekend and then I rewatched it today and did not watch the next episode. As you know, I had to check with you first because, I am prone to just jump in to the next episode. But I didn't do that here. And it is a big cast. Um, I'm not having trouble following everybody,
Just remembering everybody's names was mostly
but
my thing.
but there are quite a few storylines happening to follow. So, yeah. So, do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, so we kind of pick right up where we left off, where Dana, who is the sheriff's deputy, we had left off in episode 2 with her talking to M's roommate, whose name I still don't know. I think it might have been revealed at some point, but it hasn't been revealed enough times for me to remember it. Um, and she is saying that she knows who killed M. And so we go into a flashback of the roommate and M going to this lady's house who sells art. And it's I'm not sure I understood the setup. They make it into a joke about how if you say what kind of chicken art you buy, you get something with it.
Yeah.
Is that a euphemism for you're buying drugs with these terrible paintings?
Yes. Like, so
So the mom is in on the drug dealing?
it's not totally clear. I'm assuming she's got to be, given the system in place, but I think she feigns ignorance.
She seems pretty out to lunch, so I would just be surprised if she was actually, dialed in enough to be in on this drug deal thing.
Right. And also, just want to put out there that you can be forgiven for not remembering the roommate's name because it's Mathurin, which does not roll off the tongue very easily. I do think that the mother of this Mother Check, I don't know what her first name actually is, just Mrs. Check, I guess. I think she's definitely like in on this, and this is the way that she, um, you know, we see this is the way I guess she unloads her very prolific chicken art collection that she has created. Um, so anyway, the roommate is relaying this whole story about what happened that night and what her theories are, and it's not a very flattering picture she's painting.
No,
Uh,
I kind of want to see M's version of the retelling of this.
right, me too. However, we do get some confirmation a little later about this version of things. So anyway, she claims that they went to get pills for M specifically, and that while there, um, M kind of went rogue and stole all the oxy that we saw later on, that Dana found in the clock radio that was in M's room. And this is not like she did it totally stealthily because one of the Czech brothers, I'm assuming, is it Anthony who came after her? I
I think
think
it's Andrew.
Is it
It's
Andrew?
the it's the
Andrew.
same guy we see later, and we haven't met Tony or Anthony yet, as far as I'm aware.
Okay, so I guess it's Andrew, and basically she gets chased out
And
with
shot at too, like not just a fun little chase.
right, and Mathurin claims to be, innocent in all this, and so her theory is that she got killed by one of the Czech brothers, and that if Dana wants to find out more, she needs to um, go over to that, go over there. She does say that they escaped, so she didn't see M get shot or anything, but she does think that that had something to do. She believes that she got murdered by one of these brothers because of the her involvement in this heist. And
So
Dana's in a little.
Mathurin is her last name, just
Oh,
as a point. I guess it's K. I'm only getting that from the Wikipedia because I'm not sure that she's been referred to by a name yet, but we can call her
well,
K.
I'm gonna call her Mathurin because I think it's funny.
Okay.
Anyway, understandably, like then this is like the whole thing, and this is part of the mystery, and um, you know, the bigger mystery. Dana does not accept this version of the story, and I think she wants to find out more. She's very skeptical, and she's not totally unfounded in the sense that this roommate is not exactly the most sympathetic character or person, and she's been plying or providing M with drugs, even though, and not only that, but just kind of like abandoning her when clearly she was going through a pretty rough time. And so kind of enabling her, not even kind of, she was enabling a pretty bad situation. That said, I will say the roommate does point out some very good things, which is like, do you really know who she is? Because you didn't even know that she had relapsed. You didn't know all these other things. So there's some pretty hard truths that, as a character, and this is also a part of the mystery. So, when I mentioned the multiple storylines, there's, storylines about what actually happened to M, and that's like the big underlying piece, maybe how it's connected with the revivers, or how that all ties in. And you have what you normally don't have. You have somebody that is now murdered and back, and so basically able to assist in their own investigation.
Yeah.
Um,
That's kind of a crazy concept for a story, but I like it. It's
yeah.
working.
But then you also have these other storylines within the community happening. That there's this sort of insidious corruption going on. You have the drug dealers, but there's this other kind of culty guy running around, who is incredibly weird and scary. He just seems just ultimately sketchy no matter what he does. And then, again, the big overarching mystery, which is the revivers and what has happened. Why is this even happening in the community? So there's so there's lots of stuff going on, and so just that sort of expands the cast to kind of follow these different threads, and some of them overlap entirely. So I think they do a pretty good job at flipping from one to the other. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like it's too diffuse?
No, no, I think my comment at the beginning of this was that couldn't remember everybody's name, and I think that's about as far as my confusion goes. I can track the story otherwise pretty well, and I think they do a good job of going from one to the next, and it is all really related to this Cypress family, and it's kind of funny because it's getting into like Hatfields and McCoys a little bit in this
Yeah,
episode because it's like stay away from the Cypresses and I'll stay away from
I
the
know.
Czechs.
Well, I do like how they follow the story a little bit through the Cypresses. So it's like through Dana, through her father, through M,
And through Cooper, the boy.
and through Cooper. So, um, yeah, and I've neglected to mention one of the big pieces of this whole drama is about how the community is reacting to the revivers, and that's like Cooper has a huge part in that particular storyline. Um, so yeah, so
So let's talk about what happens at school with Cooper, because that's basically right after this opening
yeah.
scene with Kay and Dana.
Yeah. So Cooper is a pretty um he's we haven't seen like a ton of him, but what we have seen of him, there's like a moment between him and Jordan, who's the little girl reviver that Dana encounters in the first episode, I believe. Um and she's being really treated very like poorly by her classmates, like just a lot of bullying and
This goes beyond bullying to like threatening violence. I mean, that is bullying, but the one kid is going to stab her with a pencil, right? Like he's like, hold still, let me show you something or something. Yeah, it's really aggressive. Cooper does the right thing, I think. I think it's total BS that he gets punished.
yep.
Nothing seems to happen to the other boy, although he's the only one with a wound to show for it. So maybe that's just the way school justice goes. But Cooper just slams a locker door in the kid's face. Uh, and there should have been tons of witnesses there to be like, that kid was gonna stab her.
Yeah.
So, but apparently nobody speaks up for Cooper because he ends up in detention. And not only that, but gets suspended for the rest of the week,
Yeah.
which for a single working mother, that's got to be tough. And frankly, her childcare scenario is not ideal because it's Nella's bar is
I
where
know. That's
she's
like
gonna drop him off later.
super off.
I don't know that that is would be my first choice of childcare, but hey, when you like I said, single mother don't have a lot of options. Maybe
Yeah.
she
So,
can't give him to her dad. He's clearly the worst at minding a young boy because he takes him to crime scenes.
yep. Um, who isn't guilty of that in this family? Um,
I guess so. Yeah.
but yeah, she really she goes and she actually calls out the principal, the teacher, whoever it is, and he actually acts incredibly insensitively. Like he doesn't want Jordan in the class and he's talking about it in front of her and she's like this little girl and so there's a couple of instances of this, both with him and then next when they go to visit her family and her family hasn't picked her up from school even though they called. Um, and it feels very like to me, I don't know if this would really happen. I hope it wouldn't, but like the fact that they'd even suspend Cooper seems a little to me a little weird here. And then, you know, Dana brings Jordan home and the poor kid is just sort of like, oh yeah, it happens all the time and they hear her family fighting, her parents fighting. And this kid is coming, like, I think even pre-revival, this kid, reviver, it, whatever you want to call it, this kid is dealing with a pretty unhealthy family situation, or it feels like it anyway. Um, and they very much do not accept her return. They seem pretty upset about it. They seem to argue about it. They think that she's not her, like her. And so this also delves into how people are feeling about the revivers when they're actually coming back to their families. And we've also seen a little bit of this, though with better reason, with the reviver, the elderly lady, which her name is escaping me. Do you remember it?
Arlene.
Eileen. Obviously, she's acting in a very different way, but there's a rejection of the fact that they have come back. And in this case, it's a little kid, and she just kind of like she's taking everything pretty well. She just says,
Yeah, I'm concerned this is her like evil villain origin story because she's taking it and not showing any like real emotional response to this rejection by her
"Yeah,
own parents. And the fact that people adults are talking about her in such negative terms right in front of her, and she doesn't seem to reflect any of that.
yeah." So we're gonna have to see what happens with her. I got the same thing. Like it's like, is she building up until she snaps? Is she showing them something that we are not seeing, right? So that's the other question I have.
Mm.
But we've also seen M, and we've seen M's like reaction, though maybe it's different for a little kid that comes back. We see M's reaction and also her new um, boyfriend. What is his name? He's like
Rhodey or something like
Brody
that.
or something. And you know, I wouldn't say he's dealing with this, I guess, I don't know, not even a healthy way, but he gets, you know, he's gone full on goth in terms of his performance, and now he can actually, damage himself on stage. That doesn't seem to be the healthiest um, way to go about it, but you know. Um,
This is a classic example of all aesthetics and no no actual content. Like
yeah,
his poetry is pretty weak
really bad.
sauce. His music isn't that great. So really all he's got is cutting his torso open and sticking his hand inside his skin. Like
Yeah,
that's literally all this guy can do, unfortunately. So hey, you know
yeah,
what? You got to play to your strengths.
he does. But my point is that the other like revivers, himself and M, although they are doing some things that just because they can, because of what their new superpowers kind of afford them. We're not seeing anything as terrifying as what Arlene has been showing, but it could be that Jordan is showing something different to her parents at home. That said, I would argue that her parents, based on their current actions around Dana, seem pretty damn scary to me, but
Yeah. Yeah. This is a great excuse to call CPS and this kid should not be living in this house.
no,
Like her parents won't even look at her.
right. And so it's kind of, and I like that Dana calls him out on it, but then she kind of leaves her there, doesn't she? So it's
Yeah, well,
like,
yeah.
ugh. Um, and anyway, she continues to try to figure out the story.
Wait just a sec. So she does lecture Jordan's parents about unconditional love
Mm.
and then goes and drops her son off at the bar to be
Yep.
taken care of by the bartender.
Yes. Um,
Just that's some
uh,
nice, balance there. And then
um,
we go to Ibrahim, who's checking all these different materials in petri dishes for signs of where Revival Day came from, like what's happening. And as he's doing this, he gets the toxicology report for Arlene, and he goes to ask for a police escort to the Dittman house. And he's trying to get Dana to be his ride, but then her dad is like, "I will take you," because he doesn't. I don't know what he's what suddenly he doesn't like Ibrahim. And then in the Dittman house, Ibrahim finds the room where Arlene was being kept, which was chained to a bed, and there's a bunch of medicine on a countertop. And there's a scary moment where he is being held at gunpoint by Mr. Dittman, who is the son-in-law of Arlene. Mr. Dittman's late wife was killed in the barn in episode one.
hmm
And Ibrahim takes the drugs from the dresser uh, surreptitiously.
hmm
It's unlabeled, and then that turns out to be fairly important later. And honestly, I kind of like the writing for this, and I'll just skip to it. But he discovers that Arlene was being poisoned before she died,
Right.
or maybe that was the cause of death, potentially.
Potentially.
Um, and that poison, I forget what it was,
I think
mercury
it's
or something.
free.
Yeah, like that's gonna make her insane, right?
Mad Hatter syndrome is a syndrome for a reason, right? Or was that arsenic?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm not up on my poisons, HA. Tell me more.
Mad Hatter's disease. It's the colloquial term for mercury poisoning.
Oh,
So, because it can cause neurological damage, and the reason why is because the hat makers were exposed to it during the process. So that was like, and it's a little bit about why the Mad Hatter in Alice in Wonderland is so mad. So
huh.
there you go.
What
I
in
was,
hats is made of mercury?
I think it was there was like a dye or a powder or something that went along with it, with the making of it.
You gotta love the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, like it was like um I want to say it was like used to treat something on it. Let me see. Ah, yes, like the felt and things like that. They would use mercuric nitrate to treat it, especially animal fur and felting it into hats. So there you go. And so that all when you were making this, when you were kind of through the whole process, they would breathe it in and so become
Hmm.
mad or
Just
Mad Hatter's disease.
that's terrifying. So this happened to Arlene leading up to her death. And I will say that this episode has a nice strong through line of showing that injuries that you sustained before you died and revived are still kind of there on you. Because Rhodey shows his scar on the palm of his hand later, and it's still quite clearly there, and there's red lines around it from where it was infected. I'm trying to think if there are any other examples of that in this episode, but that being so profoundly kind of stated in this episode makes to me makes it clear that Arlene as a zombie is the way she is because she was being poisoned as a living person.
Yep.
Anyway, that's my
And
hypothesis.
yes. And you know, um the good doctor, and he's dealing with a lot of like negativity even in this house, and he almost gets like killed during this process. Um so he's keeping his theories a little bit under wraps until later because I think he certainly got like I think it's funny later when the sheriff is like, "Oh, you didn't tell me about this." And it's like, "Yeah, when was I going to tell you?" At the end of the shotgun of the guy who probably was killing her.
Well, he had to do some tests on the material,
And he
the
didn't know for
substance.
sure. He didn't know for sure,
Yeah.
but he's very much like, I haven't seen any other, this is aberrant behavior. Nobody else is showing this. So there's something different about this. And so he's very focused on finding what the answer is. Um, but yeah, I think and there's a reason why Arlene's son-in-law is so very nervous about anybody being around the house and figuring things out. He's not exactly subtle, though, as we find out later.
No, that funeral scene is
Pretty
wild.
out in the open. So, yeah. So we've still got her running around and that mystery happening.
Yeah, nobody knows where she is. M has woken up at Rhodey's house and he's telling her about how he died, which is from an avocado. And she doesn't tell him how she died because she still doesn't know. And this is still helpful because we're not sure still how reliable of a storyteller M is. So the fact that
Uh,
she's telling this kid that she doesn't remember how she died is also like that
and
corroborates what she's been telling her sister.
and again, he didn't die from an avocado. He died from blood poisoning from a cut he got cutting
It
an
was
avocado.
avocado death, H.A.
Um,
Conrad. I don't know how you missed that. That's a huge plot point in this
okay.
show.
But I think that the important thing about this exchange between them, so she brings up the fact that other people think, and a trigger warning again here, but other people think, including her sister and her ex, that she could have taken her own life. And she's not, this is the first part where we see that maybe she doesn't know for sure, but she doesn't think has done this. However, she can't rule anything out because she really doesn't remember. And this is actually like the exchange between these two characters. This is a pretty good bit of relationship building and character building here because he's very empathetic and kind here to her, and honestly kind of joins forces to help her figure out what's happened. And he's the first person that has shown her just complete unconditional support. Granted, he did not know her before,
We
but
don't think he did, but
we
what?
don't.
She doesn't remember very
That's
much.
true. That's true. But he does, he's also had his own reviver story. And so like they are now kind of like dedicated, or they're now a team to some extent to try to figure this out. Um, and so they're off to their little gothy show. And she does at least feel like she's got a little support in trying to figure this out. And she does talk about some of the imagery she's been seeing, but she can't connect it with anything. She just has a feeling something happened. So, and we see a little bit of some of the drawings that she's been continuously kind of like compulsively putting into that little book she has. And then they're off to his very extra special talentless goth show. Um, and so
It seems to
she,
be underwritten by the Czech brothers too. Like they're on the door, or they're certainly,
yeah, it's kind of
yeah.
weird. So yeah, and then in the meantime, her sister has been at the Czech brothers' house and buys a breakfast chicken and has a very, and we also find out a little bit of the background with the Czech brothers and the Cypresses here. In that Andrew went to school with her, with Dana, and there's no love lost there. She's very much trying to like fish for some things, and he's incredibly threatening, and it's such an interesting contrast because his mother's just sort of like weirdly focused about the chicken paintings. So it adds this bizarre little levity to a very weird situation. But at the end, he does say, it's this whole like, you know, weird little rivalry between their families where he's just like, it's not even a veiled threat. He was like, this is a comic book about people that like what happens when someone threatens somebody's family. And it's like, just say it, man. You don't need to use veiled threats with a comic book at this point, right? And then he really gets into it and he was like, if you don't stop threatening my family, there will be another dead Cypress. And so she obviously thinks that he's talking about her sister. Um,
Yeah, she sure does.
and
But yeah, but I honestly, I wasn't clear if he was threatening Cooper in this scene because he's like, here's a comic book for your son, you know?
Oh, I think he was threatening all of them. I think he's basically like, you'll go after my family, I'll go after yours. Cooper seemed like an obvious thing to mention. Fine. But then she goes off to the races to try to, after finding out, like, again, so a little bit of this is one of the things that annoys me. Um, when she went to the bar to sort of drop off her kid to stay with the bartender, and gets the information that her sister, like, oh, she wasn't here with anybody, but she left with a punk. It's like obviously she was with somebody. And it's like this teasing out of this storyline seems kind of dumb, but whatever. That seems sort of sloppy to me. I think they were trying to make it funny because it's like she lives with some punk. It's like a bad guy. No, no, like a real punk,
Yeah.
like from a punk rock band. So anyway, she goes off to basically track her sister down and ends up confronting yet another Czech brother.
Well,
And
what goes on at this show is kind of bananas because
yeah.
Andrew Czech uh sees M at the show after he's done the whole cut the chest thing and is gonna like go after her. And then Rhodey from the stage goes, "He's messing with my girl," and the audience goes to help M.
Hmm.
And then Andrew goes to his brother. I forget the brother's name. It's something brothery. Like you're dead. Get her. You're dead meat, M. Cypress. He says her full name in his threat, and then Dana is there and tases him. So, and it's really weird that she arrests the one who had threatened and come after her sister, but leaves Andrew completely alone, even though he is also looming and being menacing. And she's like, "Do you want to join this one of your brothers?" But ultimately does nothing to Andrew. I feel like she probably had probable cause to arrest both of them. They both threatened and come after her sister, and she was there the whole time.
Yeah.
Of course, she's by herself, and she's not in uniform. All she has is her taser, but she could have tased Andrew.
Yeah. It's and then, it's kind of, I mean, I think one of the big things here is that he didn't seem surprised to see, I guess we don't know that why he's surprised to see him. He just knows that she's the one who kind of took the drugs or whatever. But it felt to me like if they thought she came back from the dead, he'd be acting in a different way. So maybe he wasn't in on that, the brother. I don't know. That was the thing that kind of struck me from this whole interaction.
Yeah. Well, once they've got the other brother, Tony, no, not Tony, Adam is in Adam, Andrew, and Anthony. Oof. Once Adam is in interrogation, again, she's by herself. She has very little oversight as a cop, does Dana.
Mm.
Uh she basically outs M as being a reviver in front of Anthony, who's on speakerphone, as she's trying to cut this deal about like, I will let Adam go if you agree to leave my family alone, and outs M as being a reviver in that moment. So the circle continues to grow of people who know that she's a reviver. And that becomes, I think that's pretty significant based on how this episode ends. Not to jump to there, but I'll just leave it at that for now. What did you think of the deal she cut and her ethics as a cop?
Yeah, it felt a little weird here. But it also felt a little too familiar. Like she's gonna maybe things like this have happened. Maybe there's things that her dad has done in a similar vein. Um, I don't know. Um, it's hard to tell, but it does feel a little too feels a little corrupt, honestly.
I
Um,
feel like she doesn't really have the standing to make this offer, considering that she is a subservient to her dad, who's the sheriff, and she's making promises about her family not coming after the Czech family, and she doesn't have any control over that.
correct. Um, so yeah, this feels a little dicey to me. Though, I mean, we still haven't, I know we will eventually have a reveal with Tony Check. But in this case, I think it's one of those things where he's like kind of the big bad that we're gonna wait to reveal.
Yeah, I really
Um,
want to see what his teeth look like because his brother's teeth are both messed up.
they're messed up. Yep. So
Speaking of things being messed up, Ibrahim finds a petri dish that has burst its banks, so to speak, with the Moore Creek uh, petri dish sample has like grown and it looks like mud, but it wasn't like that 2 scenes ago, so it's that seems to be a concern. That's kind of where we leave that issue for this episode, but we know that Moore Creek might come up later. Uh, and what else? M thanks Dana by text because she actually had dumped her phone last episode, so there's no way for them to get a hold of each other,
right.
except that M, I think, borrows Rhodey's phone and texts Dana and says, "Thanks for saving me at the concert." But she and Rhodey had run away from the show and are now like outside on a bridge in the at night. So he did like half a song and left the concert. Great show, everybody.
Yeah, I know. One song and you're done, and nobody's really complaining. I doubt it. But you know, Rhodey and this does lead to a revelation because they end up back at the bridge, which seems to be
It's a different bridge this time.
but the bridge theme seems to be a
Yeah,
thing.
for
And
sure.
he kind of says, oh,
Honestly, the bridge that she's supposedly jumped off of is like 8 feet above the river.
yeah. So it's also like, why would that have been such a thing?
Because of her brittle bones. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I go back and forth on that too. I'm like, this is not a bridge you jump off of to kill yourself,
Right.
unless you've got bird bones.
But you could be trying to get away from somebody, so that's the maybe the other point. And one revelation that she's had with Rhodey is that she didn't have broken bones when she woke up, so probably that wasn't the cause, or at least we know that wasn't necessarily the cause of her death. But he's kind of pushing her along and maybe not necessarily in the most positive way, but I guess he's like kind of like, hey, we're still living or we're back and, encourages her to live a little. And by live a little, he means jump off a bridge with him because they can't die, which it still hurts. So it's not like it's totally pain-free, but anyway, so they're kind of going on their journey, and in her revelation, she kind of sees the crazy cult guy in her head.
Yeah, from as a memory of the night she died,
Yeah.
she sees him with a flashlight on the bridge approaching her, I think.
Yeah. And he makes an appearance in this episode as well, and we get a little bit more of the underbelly of what's going on with Arlene in this whole town. And this is at the funeral of Arlene's daughter, and you know, um, Arlene's son-in-law is being incredibly direct, which is that, it's supposed to be the eulogy for his wife and ends up being really not so much as a eulogy as a confession. But he basically is like, oh, she sacrificed everything, and even though taking care of her mother ruined our marriage, she did that anyway, and it was like it's really rough. And Arlene pops up like, and is animalistic and just merely going to see her daughter's body. Like, so there's some vestige of something there. But nobody knows what to do because there's no way to take her out. They shoot her as she's coming down the aisle of the church, and it's like a pretty rough scene. Um, and
Because
then
she's already broken
right,
Dittman's neck by this point. Yeah. And then she just got like jumps up into the casket. Then Blaine shows up right after she does. So I feel like he was holding her somewhere, right?
I do too. Yeah, yeah. I think he knew where she was, and he's been I think this was deliberate, definitely.
Yeah, but he walks in ch saying some chant about like I forget exactly what, but she's going to show us the promised land sort of deal. But then splashes her with an accelerant. It looks like holy water, but I think it was gasoline, and then lights her on fire in the casket on top of her daughter Terry. Uh, and like that's the end of the scene. But yeah, Dittman's lying there dead. Blaine is arrested as a result of this for what was it? There was some charge like you can't light people on fire in a church.
Yeah, something like that. And I mean, the sheriff is talking, gets called to the carpet by the mayor, and he's talking about, well, I don't even know what to do, and all this. And the mayor basically is laying out this plan about essentially tracking, and they invoke this whole idea of internment camps. And there's,
I mean, I thought the mayor has been pretty consistently against that. Like he doesn't want to he thinks of the revivers as members of
oh,
his.
I meant he's like part of the whole conversation with the governor pops up and is
Oh yeah.
basically holding them accountable. And she's got some religious bent on everything. She calls them out when they use the Lord's name in vain and that kind of thing. But she points out that they didn't know about Arlene, so how many people are they not tracking? That this is a danger to the community, and to her point, like the apparently Arlene's her cremains are reviving again slowly, but they are reviving. So there is at this point no way to actually like get rid of the revivers from what they can tell. Um, I mean, I guess there would be a few like it's hard to know if they could just revive from like one part and then that makes a whole like or if you could scatter things, but they haven't gotten that far into it. So there's a lot of those kinds of themes happening here about, well, are they human? Are they not? Like, what do you do with them? And how do you, you know, and the sheriff is like, I want to keep the community safe. But the mayor is also like, but this is also people from our community. So there's just a lot of tension about that.
Yeah.
And there's no way to keep Blaine in jail. And he really is this he clearly does not, he's both viewing them as a way to sort of gather people around him. But, you know, it, like, I think before this, people would have thought he was a total nut, and now he is slowly gaining some followers. Not even
Yeah,
that
it's like a
slowly.
dozen people
Mhm.
at the end of the episode, including one young man who looks kind of concerned. We'll find out more about him, I'm sure. But I
Yep.
think the real bombshell at the end of this is that Sheriff Cypress is given permission to track and tag all revivers in the community since his list of 47 apparently was not sufficient because Arlene wasn't on it. And so this is where the governor draws this conclusion that they have to find out how many revivers there are. And he can put the violent ones in a separate facility, um, creating internment camps, basically.
Hmm.
This
And so
is,
that's
this
kind of
what?
where we leave it, right?
Yeah, this basically we leave it well with Blaine meeting his followers and saying, "You guys ready for a holy war?" And he says that in the sheriff's office.
Yeah.
So, if anybody's surprised when he becomes a problem later, they shouldn't be.
Right. And I think that this is just laying the groundwork. This whole episode is laying the groundwork for the tension we're going to see in this community. It's really the speech between or the talk between the mayor and the sheriff and the governor lays the groundwork and the conflict that we're going to see, like different ways of seeing how you treat revivers. And I think that there's obvious parallels you can draw in to current world events and this. And so there's definitely we'll have to see how all this plays out. It does not surprise me that Blaine is taking a center stage or will take a center stage, and it doesn't surprise me that he's the one that popped up in M's memory. So we'll have to see a little bit more about him. I think they're doing a slow roll of his background, but I'm sure we're going to see some type of culty religious like aspect to him revealed as it continues.
Yeah,
So
still not the big bad. It was as my gut.
yeah, probably not, but maybe being encouraged by the big bad or the big bad's hiding behind him.
Yeah.
I also think that the Tony check has potential. Maybe they're all connected. I don't think Tony check is the big bad either, but we shall see. So, if you enjoyed watching this episode and are enjoying the show, please drop us a line at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. And we'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I'm excited to watch the rest of this show. It's so far feels pretty good to me, and I'm curious to. I do want to hear how all the mysteries play out.
It's still an entertaining show. This one had less yucks as the previous ones. It wasn't quite as funny, but it does have the chicken art lady. So I like that they're sticking with this theme.
Agree, and I do like the little undercurrents of the chemistry between her, the awkward chemistry between her and the good doctor. So, Dr. Rahim, I think, does a really good job at playing that role and making his interest, there, but still awkward. So I'm very excited to see how that plays out. I would like to see more scenes of those two together.
Yeah, totally. Find the rest of our episodes online at reanimated.podbean.com and join us again next time when we continue along this merry journey.
Yes, until next time, thanks for listening, and bye bye.
Bye bye.